Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Lalana. So today we're going to talk about what is actually sabotaging your twin flame journey. What's actually sabotaging your journey at every turn basically is your ego. Is the ego's attachment to the identity that you believe that you are. So the ego attaches itself to wounds, to past, to trauma, to karma, to labels, to definitions, to belief systems, to programs. And so all of these things that we come into this incarnation with, some from past lifetimes that we have been indoctrinated into, some of them we take on in this lifetime. Some of them are ancestral karmic wounds, ancestral bloodlines. These things that are basically entrenched within our subconscious belief system, they become what the ego believes is the identity. And so when we go through an ascension process, we go through spiritual awakening, we get activated by the twin flame dynamic in this reality. The first thing that gets tested is the ego. The first thing that gets pushed is the ego. It's these identifications of self, right? So this is the deep diving of shadow work. It's the deep diving of the healing process. The healing process, what that actually is eradicating the belief systems that are telling you that you are this thing due to this experience, right? So the subconscious logs these experiences into its memory banks. And then it believes and regurgitates these things over and over again. This is me, I'm my job, I'm this, I'm whatever these things are. And this becomes basically the basis of who we think we are. And so when we're going through the awakening process, when we're going through an ascension, and all of these old wounds, all of these old programs start coming up to the surface, because these are based in low density vibrations. These are held in our lower chakras and lower vibratory systems. So in order to rise in consciousness, in order to go through the awakening process, through the dark night, and to actually ascend, we have to shift from a carbon-based system into a crystalline-based system, and then eventually back into a light body system. So in order to do that, we have to remove the energetic system that is extremely heavy, that is being held in these lower chakra systems. So these are the traumas, these are the karmas, these are the wounds, the ancestral patterns, all of these things. So these are a heavy energetic system and a belief system, as I said, that we identify with and that we attach to. So when we're going through the twin flame dynamic and these things are being flushed to the surface and the twin is triggering this wound and all of these other things, the ego is immediately defending itself. You know, if you get triggered, you defend yourself. If you get triggered, you immediately want to, you want to fight back, you want to argue, you want to defend yourself, you want to do all of these things. And the thing is all of the things that the ego is defending are actually not even aspects of you. They're aspects that you believe you are based on past experiences that were usually difficult, right? Triggers are experiences, or we get triggered by past experiences that were hard for us, that are still embedded in that subconscious and that are still held energetically within our chakras. So when we're coming at that system and we're looking at, okay, why am I reacting the way I'm reacting? Why do I feel triggered by this? These, as I've been saying for years, are the golden keys to unlock yourself from your own prison, right? So when we get triggered, we need to look immediately, why is this triggering me? Where is this coming from? Where's the core wound of that? Is this who I am? Is this wound who I am? Is this ancestral karma who I am? Is this trauma? Is this karmic relationship? Are these things actually my truth? They're not. They never are, and they never will be. But your ego will try to convince you that they are. It'll try to convince you that that is you. That's your identity self, because that's all it knows. The ego does not know the higher self. It has no concept of the higher self. It has no concept of soul. And so when we're shifting out of the carbon-based system into the crystalline-based system, which basically means in layman's terms, we're shifting out of the egoic mindset into the higher self, right? When we're shifting out of the material and into the emotional, when all of these things are taking place energetically, there's so much going on that the ego is automatically feeling very threatened by this. The person who you believe you are is feeling threatened by the twin flame path. They're feeling threatened by the awakening, by the ascension process, because these processes are bringing up to the surface and then eradicating all the aspects of you that you believed you were. So when we're identifying with aspects of the self, this is basically sabotaging our journey. These conditionings that we hold on to so tight are what is sabotaging our path. And the reason for that is that we don't want to let go of what we feel is comfortable. We don't want to let go of what we feel is familiar. And I say we, actually it's the ego that doesn't want to let go of the familiarities, of the definitions, of the labels, of the identifications, and certainly not of the attachments. And so we talk about resistance a lot. Resistance is basically the nemesis of you moving forward in your life in any way, whether you're on the twin flame path, whether you're awakening, whether you're not, whether it's whatever. So anything that we resist persists. Anything that we are resistant to in a way that we are holding on to a pattern that we know is not healthy for us, or we're having a behavior that's reoccurring, we're having something that's coming up all the time. We're seeing a program, you know, I'm dating this person, and I keep having that same stuff come up over and over again. You know, these karmic programs, when we're resisting healing those and when we're resisting looking at those, that is what is basically gunking up our chakra and energetic system like glue, like paste. It's just gunking it all up. And so it's very difficult, if not completely impossible, to have a clean and clear energetic system where we're tapping into our heart space, where we're moving from our toroidal field, and where we're moving from our higher knowing, our third eye, our crown chakra, and our pure intuition, our connection with Source, God, Universe, Creator. So on the twin flame path, we're hitting all of these aspects of us that we believed all our life are us, right? This is me, and that's me, and that's me. And so the ego tends to hold on to all of these things, especially the divine masculine, more so than the divine feminine. But the divine feminine certainly during the path is holding on to, but I'm this label, you know, I'm this job, or, you know, I'm a mom, or I'm a parent, or I'm a sister, or, you know, I'm an architect, or I'm a doctor, or whatever it is. And having any sort of awakening, ascension energies coming in that are pushing that out of you, that are pushing that egoic mindset and conditioning and belief out of you, is going to make you push back against this path, right? So a good example of that is saying, you know, my twin flame is triggering this core wound that I'm still working on, or, you know, my twin flame is triggering me in some way. And so my initial reaction is just to like fight back, to push, to argue, to whatever else. And I'm missing the point, right? I'm missing the boat. I'm missing the fact that this person, my other self, my same soul, is actually showing me a wound that I need to release because I am identifying that as myself. And so we tend to move into this situation where we want to blame the other person because we don't like feeling uncomfortable. We don't like the way it feels when anyone touches those wounds, right? We don't like that sensation. And so our ego is immediately going to defend whatever that trigger was, whatever that wound is, whatever that belief system or that program is. The ego is going to defend that. And so the more we allow the ego to step up and defend itself and defend this wound and this program and this situation and all of these things, the more we allow that, the more difficult this journey becomes. Because if we are at constant resistance to all of the triggers and all of the lower vibrational systems that are going on within us, as I said, this journey becomes pretty sticky. It's the whole let go or be dragged concept. If you're going through an awakening process, you are being led by your higher self. This is no longer an ego decision. This is no longer an ego's choice. We do not decide to awaken. We don't decide to ascend. We don't decide that we are twin flames here in this reality. Those are decisions that are made by us as our higher self, as our monad self, soul, as our oversoul, before we incarnate. We've already planned to do these things. It isn't like we're here and we're like, oh, okay, so this is what I'm going to do now. No, this is already planned before you incarnated here. So if you're going through an awakening process, this is why we're always talking about surrender and staying in the flow and staying in neutrality and doing all of these things, because it's going to make your path so much easier if you just release the things that are causing you friction, that are creating resistance in your life, that are triggering you, that are repeating on, constant autopilot, the programs, the ego chitter chatter, the mind chitter chatter and the mind talk that isn't in your highest good. The more we resist all of these things, the harder it's going to be, because the higher self is going to continue to push you. That's the thing. Once you're on the path, it's not like your higher self is like, oh, well, okay, it was too hard for Lalana, so we'll try next time. No, this is like lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. I have been preparing to come into this incarnation to do exactly what I'm doing right now. So it isn't an ego choice of saying, no, this is too hard, and so I just can't do it. And the higher self isn't going to be like, yeah, you're right, it's just too hard and you just can't do it. No, my higher self will continue to push me until I eradicate those things that I am in such resistance to. So the thing about the ego and the thing about these programs and how the ego attaches to these and acts as if it's you. So it's so important when we're on this path to recognize that that is such a massive part of why it feels hard. It's such a massive part of why it feels like I keep going in circles and I keep going in this spiral and I'm peeling off this layer of the onion and there's 50 more layers of the onion that I have to peel off, and this just feels really hard. It's because we're in resistance to the parts of us that we are still holding on to, right? We're still holding on to those identifications, because if we're not this, then what are we, right? So even when you're going through a spiritual awakening and you have the idea and the inclination and the awareness and the knowing, especially if you're a divine feminine more so, and you're like, okay, I get it, and I remember, and things are coming online, and my gifts are coming online, I'm starting, I know I'm a soul, I know this isn't me, but there are still those aspects of you that you just like, but still though, if I'm not this, then what am I? It's that fear of the unknown on the other side that makes us hold on to the wounds and the programs and the belief systems. It's the fear of saying, well then what? Then what am I? I've erected, this building, this wall, this house, this whatever that I feel that I am. And now you're asking me to take it apart brick by brick, right? You're asking me to pull the nails out and to get the mortar out and to basically take myself apart. So if I take myself apart, then the building isn't standing anymore. And so who am I? And so people, they push back against shadow work. They push back against inner work. They push back against doing those things because they fear of what that looks like when all the bricks and the mortar and the nails and the lumber isn't holding together this false perception of self anymore. So the best thing on this path, and as often as we can, is to trust that this is divinely guided, to trust that your higher self does know better than your ego, to trust that your ego is actually a false identification of you, to trust and to surrender to the flow that you actually came into this incarnation to do exactly what it is you're doing if you're on an awakening path and you're ascending, and to trust that you are divinely guided, divinely protected, and that you are safe. You are safe on this journey. It's your ego that is so used to operating from duality and from operating in a fear-based system and from operating in those lower vibratory chakras that doesn't want to let go of what it thinks it is and what it thinks this whole reality is and all of those sort of things, right? So it is like a deep dive into the dark. I say this all the time. Shadow work, inner work is a deep dive into the dark. Coming face to face with yourself can be a very scary thing. But at the same time, not facing those things is creating more resistance in your life. And it's creating more sabotaging energies of allowing you to move out of what no longer serves you and to move into what does serve your higher best and your higher good. And the knowing that this is actually a much more freedom path for me to be walking. When you come into inner union on a twin flame path, the freedom that comes from that is indescribable. I'm going to do another video on this. The feeling of just being held and not being attached to all of these things that you have believed you were for so long is the most freeing and the most effervescent feeling that I can't even describe. So trust the process. Trust your higher self. Trust that if you are an actual true twin flame and you are ascending, that this is what you plan to come in to do. Trust that you're being held and you're being guided and it's going to be okay. So that's what I have for you guys today. Have an awesome day.